Losing to Barack Obama in 2012 shook the confidence of many Republicans, and it's easy to understand why. After all, if you lose to the worst president in history, what does that say about you? Combine that with the frustration so many conservatives have with the GOP, and it's easy to write off the Republican Party. However, it's often darkest before the dawn, and many people are missing the fact that the GOP is well positioned to thrive over the next couple of decades. Number 1. We have the most potent grassroots movement in politics. The GOP has the Tea Party movement, while the Democrats had the Occupy movement. The Tea Party movement is about small government, cutting spending, and sticking to the Constitution. The Occupy movement was about demanding free stuff and avoiding taking baths for weeks at a time. The greatest moment for the Tea Party was the GOP's incredible success in the 2010 elections. The greatest moment for the Occupy movement was when the occupiers were protesting Wall Street and a bunch of traitors dumped hundreds of McDonald's job applications on them out of a window. The Tea Party movement is still alive and kicking. The Occupy crowd eventually gave it up when the rich liberals stopped sending the protesters free food, and they ran out of open space to poop in the city parks. Number 2. 2010 was the GOP's best year since 1948. It's funny to hear the Republican Party can't win anymore when the GOP had its best year since 1948 less than 3 years ago. In the 2010 election, the GOP added 6 Senate seats, 63 House seats, and 680 seats in the state legislatures across the country. Does that sound like a party that can't win anymore? Does that sound like a party that's dying? Number 3. We should control the House at least until the next census. Not only does the GOP control the House, but because of gerrymandering, we're likely to remain firmly in control until the next census. That will give us the capability to slam the brakes on government, no matter what happens with the Senate and the White House. Number 4. The GOP is doing fantastic on the state level. We control 29 governorships, and in the state legislatures, we control the upper chamber in 30 states, and the lower chamber in another 28 states. That gives us a deep bench and proves the GOP can be not just competitive, but dominant as long as we play our cards right. Number 5. Our numbers with minorities are only going to go up. White Americans tend to vote Republican, while Black and Hispanic Americans tend to vote Democrat. Because demographically there are going to be more Black and Hispanic Americans in the coming years, some people think that means the GOP is in deep trouble. Of course, that sort of thinking assumes the GOP will continue to get the same percentage of Black and Hispanic votes that it has always gotten. In actuality, since the GOP has done no outreach of significance in past years, we have every reason to think that our current numbers with minorities are a floor, not a ceiling. The GOP made its first real attempt to showcase minority Republicans during the last GOP convention, and the RNC has just begun to pour serious money and manpower into minority outreach. It won't happen overnight, but our numbers with minorities are going to go up significantly in coming years. Number 6. In the short term, Obamacare means a strong 2014. All the GOP needs to do to have a great 2014 is hammer away relentlessly at Obamacare and highlight scandals like Fast and Furious, the IRS persecution of the Tea Party, and Benghazi next summer, while taking care not to aggravate the base. If we do just those 3 things, we're practically guaranteed to pile on even more seats in the House, and we'll have a better than even chance of taking back the Senate. Number 7. Barack Obama gives us a medium-term opening. Barack Obama really is the single worst president in American history. The economy has been bad the entire time he's been in the White House. There are 10 million more Americans out of work than when he came into office. He's incredibly divisive. His foreign policy is in chaos. And his signature achievement is the Hindenburg of government policies. Conservatives have seen how bad he was from day one, but many other Americans are just starting to figure it out. After finally concluding that Democrats can't govern, the American people are going to be much more willing to give the GOP a chance to prove Republicans have what it takes over the next few election cycles. Finally, number 8. Long term, the ground is very unfavorable to the Democrats. As Grover Norquist likes to say, the Democrats are made up of competing parasitic interest groups. So when Democrats get into office, they immediately start doling out taxpayer money to their allies to keep them in line. Margaret Thatcher identified the coming problem with that strategy long ago when she said, "The trouble with socialism is that eventually you run out of other people's money." Unfortunately for all of us, we have a little too much socialism in this country, and we are indeed running out of other people's money. This is bad for the country in general, but it's catastrophic for the Democrats, whose entire electoral model is centered around recklessly spending money. The unions, which gulp down an inordinately large slice of the taxpayer pie, are already starting to pay the price. Their membership is down to its lowest level since the 30s, and even liberal meccas like Detroit are slashing their pensions down to nothing because they're out of money and have no other choice. If we want our children... excuse me just a minute.
I'm sorry. I just love my country, and I fear for it.
Okay, sorry about that. If we want our children to have the same opportunities and bright future that previous generations of Americans have grown up with, then this country needs a conservative Republican Party to dominate our political process over the next couple of decades. We're going to have the opportunity to save our country, and the only question left is whether we're up to the challenge. It's been a rocky few months for Democrats. After suffering through a government shutdown orchestrated by wing nutsack Ted Cruz and the baleful John Boehner, Republicans embarked on a wild ride of Obamacare bashing, Benghazi hoaxes, and all-around crackpottery of the highest odor. So, just in time, John Hawkins, writing for the uber-rightist news aggregator Town Hall, has excreted a blast of crapola with the deranged headline, 8 Reasons the Republican Party Has a Bright Future. Now, there could actually be some plausible reasons for Republicans to be throwing a mad Tea Party, but the ones itemized in this article are uproariously funny. Number 1. We have the most potent grassroots movement in politics. Mr. Hawkins' very first reason for jumping for joy cites the GOP's ownership of the Tea Party. If that is representative of the GOP's bright future, they can throw away their sunglasses. The Tea Party has been steadily losing support since their debut. Their very unfavorable numbers have tripled since 2010, and they currently can brag about an approval rating of 30%, an all-time low. That's about the same as the Republican Party itself, and we're just getting started. Number 2, 2010 was the GOP's best year since 1948. Recognizing a 65-year slump hardly seemed like a good place to start a celebration, especially when the only thing the Republicans have to look forward to is looking back fondly on the anomaly of an off-year election, where low turnout and corrupt gerrymandering helped them to win control of the House. Even so, somehow they have erased from their simple minds the 2012 election, where they lost to a gay socialist Muslim from Kenya for the second time. And they also lost 8 House seats and 2 in the Senate that they won 2 years earlier in their much ballyhooed best year in 6 decades. Number 3, we should control the House at least until the next census. Mr. Hawkins makes this assertion without providing any evidence to back it up. It is at best wishful thinking. He also seems to think that the past 3 years of having accomplished nothing more than 47 failed attempts to repeal Obamacare amounts to control of the House. The truth is that, after being handed the reins of power, they demonstrated their pitiful incompetence and a unique inability to govern. In addition, Mr. Hawkins admits that their current majority is the result of gerrymandering, and that their primary legislative goal is to slam the brakes on government. However, most polls show that Democrats are in a better position than ever to retake the House in 2014, and the government shutdown last October helps them toward that goal immensely. Number 4. The party is thriving on the state level. Mr. Hawkins may have a point here. Republicans have concentrated fiercely on state politics for the past few years. Their financiers, including the Koch brothers, have devoted hundreds of millions of dollars to local races in order to hijack state governments for the purpose of suppressing votes, subjugating women, and subverting democracy through partisan redistricting. But Republican governors are still amongst the most reviled office holders, with characters like Rick Scott of Florida, John Kasich of Ohio, and Rick Perry of Texas competing for biggest boob in America. Number 5. Our numbers with minorities are only going to go up. What? Perhaps Mr. Hawkins didn't finish that sentence and meant to say their numbers are only going to go up in flames. After the 2012 election, the GOP conducted what they themselves called an autopsy, in which they confessed to having no noticeable support from African Americans or Latinos. So, they set about to remedy that situation by passing laws aimed at keeping them from voting, snubbing them by refusing to attend the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, and by opposing any immigration reform that might treat them with respect. Mr. Hawkins then makes the racially insulting and absurd statement that white Americans tend to vote Republican, but the actual election results don't concur. Obama won 40% of the white vote in 2012, which is more than Bill Clinton did in 1992. It isn't that whites vote Republican, it's that Republicans are almost all white. Those are two very different things. Number 6. In the short term, Obamacare means a strong 2014. So, this is what the GOP is hanging their hats on? To be sure, if things with Obamacare go as badly in the next year as they have for the last few months, Democrats will have a tough time of it. But if the Obamacare website is fixed and people like having access to affordable quality health care, Republicans are going to be punished severely for opposing it. Remember, Social Security and Medicare also encounter resistance in the beginning. Number 7. Barack Obama gives us a medium-term opening. The crux of this reason for Republicans to cheer is their contention that Obama is the single worst president in American history. Mr. Hawkins regurgitates just about every assault on the president that was lobbed during the 2012 election. Remind me again, who won that one? Additionally, Obama has led a recovery from his predecessor's economic debacle that has seen the stock market soar to all-time highs, businesses reporting record profits, and the only reason the economy isn't producing more jobs is because the GOP has blocked every attempt to create them, even through infrastructure development that is critically necessary anyway. Then the GOP harangues the victims of their policies as lazy moochers and moves to cut food stamps. If Obama is giving Republicans an opening, Republicans seem to be scurrying to fill it with fresh dirt. And finally, number 8, in the long term, the ground is very unfavorable to Democrats. Once again, Mr. Hawkins has no certifiable facts to support his argument. He quotes Grover Norquist and Margaret Thatcher as if they are popular contemporaries whose ultra-conservative rantings are shaping the modern political landscape. That's funny, because he didn't mention Ronald Reagan. He also didn't mention that in 2016, Republicans will be defending 24 Senate seats versus only 10 for Democrats. In 2014, the GOP is already setting up their next roster of Todd Akins and Christine O'Donnells. And the way the Tea Party is imploding, Nancy Pelosi will most likely be returning to the speakership before too long. Perhaps the funniest thing about the article is the photo that accompanied it. You really have to wonder whose great idea it was to feature a picture of John Boehner on top of an article heralding the GOP's bright future. But in their defense, who else would they use? Rand Paul? Ted Cruz? Sarah Palin? Or maybe that vulgar Jersey Philistine, Chris Christie? Oh yeah, Republicans have nothing but blue skies ahead.